One more episode of Manufacturing Growth Talks. I'm your host, Dan Burgos. And today I'm joined by one more colleague that's been out there in the field working with manufacturing teams and businesses, and can't wait to hear some of the stories he's got to share. His name is Russell Dorsten, and he's going to tell us about his story. Russell, welcome.
Thanks, Stan. Yeah, my name's Russell Dorsten. I've been in manufacturing and engineering for a long time, well over 30 years. Uh, got multiple engineering degrees, kind of grown up in factories and product design, product development. Worked in multiple areas from automotive to white goods to consumer products and many areas in between, and have done a lot along the whole lean journey and Toyota production system, and really spent a lot of time in factories and turning factories around and working a lot in those areas, and really have a big passion for the lean process.
That's good. I like to hear that. Can't wait to delve in.
Yeah.
So tell me, let's go back a little bit on memory lane. Tell me about how'd you get into manufacturing to begin with?
Yeah. So coming out of college, I grew up in Ohio, in Southern Ohio, and went to school in Southern Ohio. Obviously, it's a big outpost for the automotive industry, and so went to work at General Motors, and basically that's kind of where you start when you go to work for a company like that. That's where they put engineers to start, as you start out on the factory floor. And it's kind of where I wanted to go as well. It's I like where things are made and how things are made, and it's great when you get to spend other people's money building giant tinker toys. So it's I like the process. It's where value is created, right? It's this is where the true value streams are, and where the value is created, where you make raw materials into parts and pieces and things, and I've basically spent time as a process engineer, manufacturing engineer. Started my career as a first line supervisor, because that's where they knocked all the entitlement out of all us new engineers when we came into the building. So you really kind of learn from the ground up and how to really work with people. And so uh, that's kind of where I cut my teeth, is in the automotive industry, working on the shop floor, and kind of never lost the bug of being in manufacturing, starting from there. And so my whole career, even bouncing back and forth between design engineering and manufacturing engineering, everything else, always kind of every stop in my career has been in the manufacturing base somewhere. It's tied to a factory somewhere. So it's
That's
been that
awesome.
way my whole entire career.
Needless to say, you're a manufacturing rat or junkie, however you want
Yeah.
to call it.
Yeah.
So tell me about. So I heard you say that one of your first experiences was being a supervisor, and I want to delve into that because
Yeah.
being an engineer myself, right? We're so strong technically, and then we have to deal with people issues and that kind of thing. I think sometimes it becomes, depending on your personality and your receptiveness to learning a different side of leadership, it can be challenging. But I'd love to hear your story when it comes to that. Just becoming a leader on top of actually working with the technical aspect of things.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I mean, you can imagine being 21, 22 years old, and then almost everybody working for you is old enough to be your parent, is the age of your mom
Oh,
and your
sure.
dad. Yeah, so you learn, and they're in the UAW at the same time. So you really learn how to navigate a completely different, all the mindsets, let's say, there, and as everybody that's dealt with being a supervisor, especially a supervisor with the hourly component, is there, and not that it's a good mindset, it's the wrong mindset or the right mindset. It's they have a different perspective than when you're dealing with salary people, especially, and it goes true for the layers of salary people. the hourly workforce has a mindset, entry level salary people have a mindset, and then, call it the executive level, the C-suite has a different mindset, where a lot of the hourly people, they're trying to make ends meet. Some of them are living paycheck to paycheck. They're worried about, what do I have to do today? Leave me alone. Let me get my job done. They definitely don't want micromanagement. There's always a lot of tension a lot of times between management. It's really, how do you know, it's how are they making their next truck payment, so to speak. When you have, entry level salary people, they're trying to build career and everything else. And so they have a different dynamic. A lot of them are starting families and things like this. And then obviously, when you have to deal with the boardroom and the C-suite, that's a different kind of dynamic as well. And so starting that off in your career early, learning how to deal with that shop floor mentality and really how to work with these people, it gives you a very fresh perspective on how things work, because it's a completely different short-term view versus a much longer term view, and how to get things done, and how to really manage people that, every day is a new day. Right?
So
Every day is a different day.
it's a different day. Like they live week to week or paycheck to paycheck or whatever the time frame is. But the point is that it's much shorter. But tell me, like, I could envision you at 21 years old, surrounded by all the workers, and you're delivering some memo or a message. You're talking about results. How are you able to get those people, to come with you, to follow you, considering they could be your parent when it comes to, age wise?
The biggest thing is, you just got to talk to them like human beings, right? You go down there, and what I found was the easiest thing to do, and it's a little harder when you're inside a union factory, right? Because it's hard to go out and work on the line. But one of the first things I realized is I went and I read the union contract cover to cover, so I could find out what I could and could not get away with,
Oh, smart.
and not have to pay out a lot of grievances and everything else. And I was lucky. I had some really good, union relationship people to work with, commitment to work with. So, but the big thing was getting out there and talking to the people, trying to understand what their motivations were, understanding, again, these people have families at home, understanding, everybody's motivations were a little bit deeper. You knew the people that would work every hour overtime you could ever throw at them, and they wanted every time. And then you knew the people that would be happy if they could only work 30 or 36 hours a week. So you kind of could play that dynamic and follow the rules. And at the end of the day, is if you were honest and treated them with integrity and respect, and you just were straight with them, and didn't have a hidden agenda, and you were just straight up and kind of told them how it was, that really was 90% of the battle, right?
Yeah.
Always, it's like anything else. When you deal with people, you've got this bell curve where, you've got a certain percentage of people that are always going to be pissed off, and you've got a certain percent of people that are always going to be happy no matter what you say. But the mass majority, if you're straightforward and you just, you treat them with respect, and you tell them the truth, and you're authentic, they're going to follow you. They're going to do what you ask them to do, as long as it's nothing crazy. And you listen, and you honestly listen to what they have to say, and you follow up with what they have to say. If they have a safety concern, you address a safety concern right away. You gain a ton of respect. If they have a suggestion that makes sense, and you do it, they respect it. If you don't do it, and you tell them why, we're not going to do this because, hey, we can't afford it, or we can't do this, and you just tell them why, and you just don't ignore it, they respect it. They don't get mad like you're being ignored. You kind of treat them like human beings. That was the big thing, right? you don't come in all hot and cocky. Hey, I'm going to change the world, even though that's what we all think when we come out of engineering school. You just kind of treat them with really good respect, and it goes a long way. It just goes along, and you know what? It's that way with everybody. As leaders, that's the way you treat everybody, and you kind of. And told this to a lot of people. When I was a first line supervisor, it's probably the job I hated the most, but it's the job I learned the most in, and maybe my whole entire career.
Yeah, probably. Good point.
Yeah.
I somewhat went through a similar thing where I was doing more the internal continuous improvement person, and then I said I need to go get some leadership experience because that's going to give me really the value of putting myself in their shoes, and it really did. It over delivered for me, honestly.
Yeah.
I couldn't within weeks, within days of just taking that role, I started learning. So I couldn't agree with you more.
You got to fend for yourself. It's
yeah.
Learn to like somebody throwing you off dock and teaching and say swim, right? Without having swimming lessons. So it's
absolutely.
You learn in a hurry.
So you were first line supervisor, GM, union environment. So like what happened there? What did you get? Were you guys rolling out a new line, or tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So I went from first line supervisor, moved into manufacturing engineering. We were in a plant, and our plant manager kind of came to us guys in manufacturing, and there in manufacturing engineering, we were the guys that really ran. We kind of did manufacturing engineering. We were kind of all the project managers inside the factory every time we were retooling anything or doing anything else. And that's kind of where my lean journey, my Toyota production system journey started. Our factory manager, then we were struggling with costs and waste and everything else. And he came to a group of us and said, hey, we really, if we want to save this facility, we've got to do something drastic. And so gathered a group of us together to really go learn how to do Kaizens, basically. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity to go over and get some training in Japan firsthand on how to do this. And so we embarked on a journey. I'm glad I was a young man at the time when I did this, because it was a lot of effort. And we basically, over the next 12 months, when we kind of got back and started, we did 44 week-long Kaizens over the next 12 months. We had a group of basically of about 4 or 5 of us, and we kind of rotated every other week. Took holiday weeks off and stuff like that. But it was a daunting task. We saved millions and millions and millions of dollars in floor space and everything else, and very, very, very successful project. Obviously turned the plant around. We need to do it for multiple reasons. One, for cost savings, but we were coming up that factory, and you got to understand, these are huge factories. You're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And this was a factory coming up, getting ready to come into a point where they were getting ready to, people were approaching a retirement age where you were going to lose hundreds of people from the workforce. Right. So you were coming into a retirement period. We're going to lose hundreds of people in the workforce. We're getting ready to come into contract negotiations where they're going to try to negotiate a 2-tier wage system to help mitigate wage costs. They didn't want to rehire a bunch of people at a higher wage bracket, so we wanted to reduce the core size of the higher tier wage. So this was another way to get that reduced and everything else. So, we had a lot of things. And so we really did. We reduced floor space required. We reduced headcount required, helped us manage the retirement over this period of time. And like I said, we did basically week-long Kaizen events, 1 week after the next, after the next, after the next. It was crazy.
So assume, you reduce probably costs, you said, if you recall, do you recall any of the numbers, like not the actual numbers, but like did we cut this by 50% or anything like that?
you would go into a work cell, or you go into a line, you would go in and you would reduce floor space by 25%. You would reduce, you would reduce scrap by 30%. You would improve output by 22%. I mean, you just, and it would change, everyone would change, but it would be numbers on these kind of magnitudes all the time. Yeah, you get some that the numbers weren't as big because they were more efficient, but you would get some. I mean, we did one where we improved scrap by 80%.
Oh, that's tremendous.
Yeah. And so you just, and you would get in, you would get these results, and you would just, and people would be amazed, and we'd like, hey, and some of it was just a matter of, you improve the labor. The cost improvement was we just no longer need to work overtime. Right. And when you're paying back then, even, this again, it's decades ago, you were paying hourly wages back then already at $20 an hour, $22 an hour. So you can imagine what overtime costs were.
Right? Oh my gosh,
so,
yes.
Yeah. So when you can reduce that overtime, that premium time costs and everything else, now you're making the same amount of volume in straight time. You're just pocketing this kind of money.
Yeah.
And so it's
millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's millions of dollars. I mean, again, you're talking plants, thousands of people.
Oh yeah. So tell me about what made that successful, you feel. Like, how do you get so many people so aggressively? What do you feel was the key that made it? Because I'm sure you've run into occasions where sometimes it just doesn't work. It's not successful. There's all kinds of challenges. But what made that effort successful?
Two things. One, we had complete upper the plant manager was 100% behind it. So we had upper management support, number one. Number two is the first day of every Kaizen workshop, we brought the operators in, gave them training, and basically the workshop was led by us, but was run by the operators. All the ideas of how to improve was basically the operators. We had unlimited, I call it unlimited. We had complete support, complete maintenance support. If we need to completely, for lack of a better word, take a line down to the ground and reconfigure the whole entire line, we could do that. Right.
That's great.
There were some limitations because we had some pretty large equipment that we couldn't pour a new pit in the ground because that, breaking up concrete and stuff. But for the most part, unless there was true monuments, we could reconfigure conveyors. We could reconfigure, we had carte blanche to get this stuff done. And so with that kind of support, there were long days, and, we would obviously,
I'm sure
people would get paid overtime, and we would feed them lunch and dinner if we had to and everything else. But it was, the operators were completely involved. We took, if it was a multi-shift operation, we had people from multiple shifts in, so there wasn't we didn't buy into this kind of thing. So it was complete operator buy-in, and we spent basically every day doing training on what we were going to do, and everybody was going in with a complete understanding what we were doing, why we were doing what we were doing. We were listening to the people on where were the problems. They know the answer. These people know the answer. And so, and part of it, and part of it was they were in, we came in and we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're trying to save your guys' livelihood at the end of the day.
There we go.
So, if the factory doesn't succeed, nobody has a job. And
that's a very persuasive, right argument right there.
Yeah. So,
and what about sustainment? Was that a challenge? Like, once you made all these improvements, was it a tough thing to sustain? Did some people struggle with the new way of doing things?
That's always the challenge, but obviously, what gets measured gets controlled. And so, obviously we kept the follow-up. Everybody kept the follow-up going, and you always have the people, you have the overtime lovers, right? And so the people that love their overtime, when their overtime starts getting cut, what you would find is they would transfer out of that area and they'd go find another area that's working overtime, because the majority of the people, and again, it's that same bell curve, the majority of the people, they want to work their 40, maybe a little bit more, and they're happy. And they would find what they would find, and you also find for the majority of people, they don't want to make bad product. They don't want to throw stuff away. They want everything they want to do, they want to do it the right way. And if you can make their lives easier, you know, they don't want to be exhausted when they go home every day. You know, they want to come in, they want to work at a good pace, a healthy pace. They want to feel safe in their work environment. And when you can give that to them, and they can come in and say, yeah, we helped develop all of this. They get that buy-in. And a lot of times you get a lot of self-policing inside those work cells, where when people try to come in and break that process that they've created, they will police those people out on their own. It makes the supervisor's job a whole lot easier as well, because it'll get self-policed by the hourly people.
There's nothing like peer accountability,
Yeah,
even with a leader.
That's right. Peer pressure is a great thing all the time.
100%. So, man, great. So you early on you were exposed to transformation, success, bringing that. So, where'd you go after that big push and success?
Yeah. Made a couple other stops. Went to a tier one, and then wanted to get into the design engineering route. So went to a company that did a lot of small precision components, where we designed products from everything from IV sets in the medical industry to the valving and pump system for both inkjet printers to the Reebok pump tennis shoe and these kind of things. So kind of did a design engineering, sales engineering job there, which was really cool, because you get to sit in front of the customer and they'd say, hey, we've got this problem, and literally doing the back of the napkin sketch kind of problem solving type stuff, which was a lot of fun. And so did that, and then really got a great opportunity to do a startup of a product division, which is what moved me to where I live today in Tennessee. And it was a division for a company that they basically developed the engine governor. And so they were doing some work in the kind of the automotive sector, and they kind of recruited a bunch of people that had automotive experience. And so we built basically a division from the ground up in getting all the automotive certifications and everything else. And we started up a facility here, which was a lot of fun. I mean, when you get a chance to start up a business, it's, as you know.
Oh yeah, exciting.
It's interesting. So we started up a division, and it was we were kind of 4 guys in a guy's basement to start, and grew it to almost 200 people in 3 years, and did that. And we rented a manufacturing space and put in assembly lines and did all these things, got our automotive certifications and everything else. And so that was a lot of fun. And then the company decided to consolidate that back to their factories back in Colorado, which then they lost all their automotive certifications because they thought it came with product and not with the site. This is ignorance, upper management ignorance, without knowing any better. But
thinking through that. So let me ask you this: when you were building that, it's almost like you get a blank canvas in building a culture, because you're like, I'm going to bring the people I want. I'm not going to inherit the bad apples from somebody else or the bad habits. Tell me about that. Like, were you guys intentional about it, or were you kind of like rushed, or how did that happen?
We were very intentional, because everybody that was kind of brought in, at least in the very beginning, I would say the first 20 people that were brought in were pretty much kind of handpicked. And so, like, people that were brought in on my team were handpicked by me and a couple other people that we knew had the right background and mindset of what we want to do to kind of scale up a manufacturing and engineering and quality organization. let's
Tell me
say.
about that mindset. Because I think that's what a lot of people in manufacturing struggle with. And you tell me if you see it differently.
Yeah.
Skill is one thing that can always be taught, is my mindset.
Yeah.
But having people that willing to do whatever it takes, go-getters, open to learning, willing to become leaders, put the time and so forth, is the big challenge. So tell me what you guys look for when it came to that.
Yeah, we weren't looking for experts as much as we were looking for energy, if that makes sense. Because we could teach people, we had enough knowledge base
There you
that
go.
we could teach people what we need to teach. And I was still pretty young at the time, but we could teach people what we need to teach them. But we needed people that were like you said, go-getters. We need people with the basic understanding of how we wanted to set up processes. We need people with the right different, we wanted a good cross-section of backgrounds, so to speak, and we didn't want a bunch of yes men or yes women.
Right.
Okay. We wanted a culture that was dynamic enough that we were going to be able to have open and honest conversation, because that's how we knew we would get to the best answers and the best solution. We wanted to be able to, we always had the adage of, hey, guys, we're going to lock the door, put all ourselves in conference room. If we have to slide pizzas under the door until we get it done, that's what we're going to do. And everybody's got to be ready to do this. If that means figuring out our budget, if that means whatever it is, when we have to solve problems and we have to come to the right answer, and we don't want people just knuckling under. And, and this is where, and we kind of had the saying is nobody's allowed to say, I told you so. It's like if if we pick
Like
a
that.
direction and it ends up being wrong and you wanted us to go a different direction, that was the right way to go. It's your fault for not bringing enough of the right arguments to convince everybody to go the other direction. It's your fault, not our fault. It's your fault. And so you can't say, I told you so. So, and I live by that mentality today as
I
well.
like that.
There is no I told you so. It's, I didn't argue enough or give you enough valid data and points to convince you to go this other way. And so,
Exactly.
and those were the kind of people we were looking for.
How big is that? Like, how big of a difference have you found that makes? You can't measure it. There's no way to get a gauge or something or a caliper and measure this is going to impact 20%. But how big is it to have the right people at all levels, if you can, to for the business?
Well, like they say, you've heard this before. Culture eats strategy for lunch,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Culture
For
eats
sure.
strategy for lunch, right? You post about it all the time. Culture
Yes.
eats strategy for lunch, and it's true. You give me a group of people with the right attitude, and you can call it culture, you can call it attitude, the right willingness, right? The right will. Everybody says, "Oh, fail fast," and we have a failure, but the real willingness to go out and try to get things done, and if it's okay to make a mistake and really feel that empowerment, these people will run through walls for people. They don't mind working the extra hours. Okay. They don't mind getting things done, right? And especially if they're rewarded for it. But when people are punished for making mistakes all the time, and when they feel that if they don't work 60, 70 hours a week, that they're going to get the crap kicked out of them, they just disengage, right? Then they can work 60 hours a week, but you get 25 hours or 30 hours worth of output. So, I would rather have somebody work 40, 45 hours, but they're just knocking it out of the park all the time just because they're just so highly efficient and engaged, and they're willing, they're just willing to challenge the status quo, and they've got the right attitude. Like you said, we can teach them the stuff they don't know.
Right. Right.
It's
100%.
to me, give me the right person with the right attitude and the right aptitude. I'll teach them what they don't know. I'll teach them what they don't know. If they've got the right competency and capability, I'll teach them the rest.
So let me
That's
ask you now, kind of as a segue, right? So in
yeah,
that instance, you had a clean slate,
yeah,
no bad apples, no bad habits, no animosity from the past, nothing like
yeah,
that. And it's a challenge in itself, but you get to handpick these people. And to me, it's almost like the ideal scenario because you get to pick the team.
mhm.
What about when you actually step in and you walk in the door and you feel, okay, that person's going to be a problem. This department's pointing fingers. And so how do you turn the tide when you already inherited a team? Can you talk about your process, your thought process around changing that culture? How do you go about that? How do you think about that?
Yeah, when you walk in, I mean, yeah, the whole difference of like when you walk into, and it's kind of like when I went from that company to the next company, is went into a factory that needed to be turned around. Okay. And it's exactly that. That's exactly what happens, right? You go in and you assess the situation and you say, okay, what's going on? And typically when you have these kind of situations, it usually comes down, it's like walking back into high school, is you got to find out where all the cliques are, right? Is you got this group of people and this group of people and this group of people, and they're all fighting with each other, and one group is trying to manipulate another group to go fight their battle with the, and you've got to break down all those barriers. And one thing I've been lucky, and I think I do a pretty good job of, or been able to do a pretty good job of in my teams, is I'm usually a pretty good assessor of talent, and I like to hire people that are really good at what they do. I mean, even better at it than I can do in their specialty. I get them all to play nice together in the sandbox, and that's the key. It's a little bit, guys. You got to check your egos at the door. People, let's check our egos at the door, and you got to get them thinking company first,
Right.
department second, and personal third. And a lot of times, it's a little bit, it's the that triangle of the we, the it, the I, right? It's how do you balance, it's how do you put the I last, right? Because if you get the other ones in the right order, all the I will come. Because if you get all that working, all the accolades will come, because that cream will rise to the top. And when you can get people working that way, and you got to lead by example that way too. I, you know, I
Yeah.
never take I never take credit for anything our group does. I'll take the blame. I just don't take the credit. I defend my team to the nth degree. I'll
You got to
take the
support your
blame.
team for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I'll take the
So
blame. But
have
not the
you had
credit.
in those endeavors, did you ever have any one person that just resisted and resisted and resisted and you felt
Absolutely.
like tell me how you dealt with those folks.
You make a change. You make a change. You try to coach them through it, right? Last thing I ever want to do is get rid of somebody. Anybody that tells you that they like to fire people or they're crazy, that nobody likes that. Nobody ever wants to get rid of anybody. People that enjoy doing that, there's something wrong with them. I know people that say this, and I do think there's something wrong with them personally. So, but nobody ever wants, that you're messing with people's livelihoods and their family. Nobody wants that to happen. So you try to coach them through it, and that's the last result that you want to have happen. But if they can't make the change, because I'm always a firm believer, if people aren't performing, okay, the first thing you have to do, you have to look at, did we is a person in a role, especially if we moved a person into a role, did we as a company put them in a role where we could make them a success? Have we given them all the right tools? Have we given them everything that we can do as a company to make them succeed? Okay. What have
Right.
we done that maybe we've done something that they're not going to be successful? Because in most cases, the company has made decisions or done things that's caused them a problem not to be successful. Not all the time, but sometimes that's the case. And so have we done everything to make them successful? Well, if we've done everything we can and we've coached them up as much as we can and helped them as much as we can, and they're still not jumping on board and they're still not, pulling the rope with everybody else, and they're truly a roadblock for the team to keep moving forward, then you got to make a change. You got to move them in, and I'm not a person that's going to move my problem to somebody else. So either you got to make a change, they've got to depart the company, or maybe there is someplace else in the company where they're going to go succeed because their passion just doesn't. Operations is a tough place. Manufacturing is a tough place.
It is. So it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. So maybe they need to go somewhere else that fits more their passion, their skill set, and they can succeed over there. And sometimes it's just a matter of their personalities don't align with what we're trying to do, and it aligns somewhere else. If you're a person that, especially nowadays, that really can't handle that you have to come into a factory every day, and a lot of your colleagues get to work from home 2 days a week, and that's really grinding at you and it gives you a bad attitude, well, then you need to go work in one of those departments where you can work from home every day. Factory runs 5 days a week. Sorry, you got to be there.
Yeah, exactly. That's not something you can do remote for sure.
Yeah.
So the next question I want to ask you was, I don't know if you've come across this, but I would assume you have. Whenever we go to factories, one of the common things we see is that middle managers, supervisors, frontline, and so forth seem to take some time to adopt the mindset of problem solving, continuous improvement. And even the company with the operators, I think we talked off camera or before we hit record that a lot of the mindset in very common out there, we've always done it this way, and they don't know a better way of doing it. How do you get those folks galvanized and to let go of that mindset and move forward? Because I feel that that's very pervasive out there in our industry.
Yeah, well, it's like anything else, right? The always done it this way is usually the number one shop floor excuse for everything. The reason, and human nature is to resist change. I mean, and all of us, there's some of us that are a little more accepting to change than others. At the end of the day, human nature likes its routine. We like homeostasis. We like this repeating pattern of life. The adage on the shop floor, and you and I've done this a long time. The adage on the shop floor is, "Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it."
Oh yeah, very common.
And when anytime anybody says that to me, I said, "Well, this is why." I said, "Then show me your preventive maintenance system, because then you probably don't have a good one of those either." I said, "This is why we have preventive maintenance. You have to fix it. You always have to fix it so it doesn't break." And I said, and to me, it's the thing I always talk to people about, because people get, let's say, sticker shock or get the concern is when people come in and start talking about these wide sweeping, hey, we need 25% improvement or 20% improvement changes. And I try to think of it and talk to people more in much smaller increments and say, hey, let's think of it like this. How do we get 0.1% better every day? Or how do we get 0.5% better every week, where they can see it now in a much smaller, manageable chunk? And as I said, hey, if we can get 0.1% better every day, or even if I can get you 0.1% better every other day, or 0.5% better every other week, and people are like saying, okay, yeah, we can, maybe we can do that. When they start doing the mental math. Yeah, okay, that sounds manageable. I said, if I can get you 0.5% better a week, I said, I'm 25% at the end of the year.
Right.
Or I'm 12.5% by the end of the year. we'll take those results. And then you start getting them into this. How do we just get better, a little bit better every day?
Right.
What can we do every day? You know, and usually for me, it's always, I always try to push, the first thing I always try to go for is scrap, because nobody ever complains about not throwing things away.
That's
right?
good.
Everybody, when you say, hey, let's go look at scrap, because nobody gets wound up about, hey, let's not throw stuff away. People get defensive about saying, okay, let's make more. Let's go faster.
Speed, there you go. Speed up and so forth.
Let's go faster. No. Let's start, it's always good. Let's start with scrap. And then from scrap, then it's always about, for me, then from there, you kind of think of the OEE lines, right? Start with scrap. And then instead of going faster, then I always say, okay, why is the equipment not running? Right?
There you
go. Why does the equipment not run all the time? Oh, well, let's go attack the availability points. Because again, it's never about faster, right? We're not telling we're not running at, a cycle time of 10 seconds. We want to stay running at 10 seconds, but instead of only running, instead of the thing only running 45 minutes every hour, we want it to run 50 minutes every hour. And instead of running at 98% quality rate, I want to run at 99% quality rate. And when you start multiplying all this together, look at what's happening here. Right?
I like that. I like that.
And so when you start attacking it in this method, even with the supervisors on the floor, and you start saying, hey, we're not going to solve it all, it's use the baseball analogy. I don't need home runs. Give me walks and singles, but get me them all the time, every day. It's like, when you look at what the Toyota guys do, it's called Toyota Kata. When you look at the Toyota Kata way, and it's always that continuous, it's the journey. And, and their big philosophy with that is they don't talk about the results. They talk about what you learn, right? And it's always that learning journey. And that's the big thing. And the key to always that is upper management has got to pay attention. They've got to pay attention. And if they're out there doing their walks and they're paying attention and they're asking the supervisors and the group leaders and however their organization set up, and they're asking them questions and they're paying attention, they'll keep the shop floor engaged and they'll get the results. Always,
for sure.
And that's how you maintain your results too.
Yeah,
no matter what the size of the facility is. So
I was going to ask about this since you brought it up too. But one colleague, we were talking about this topic, and he was saying, my experience is that most executives in upper management are one of their, I guess, I don't know if it's a weakness, but one thing he observed was that they weren't very strategic thinkers. Like that wasn't a big strength he found.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to maybe ask you, because I know you've been around all this and thinking, what are your 3 to 5 year goals? What are we doing this year? And kind of the policy deployment and Hojin type of mentality. What's key there to be successful, to be able to make those projections in the future and just take the right steps to move the business in that direction? What are the growth targets are and strategies and so forth? What's been key for you for that aspect of it to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, and it depends on the company you're in as well, right? So this is where the challenge comes, okay? So, and I've worked on both sides of the coin. I've worked in the privately held company and the publicly held company. So, needless to say, the privately held companies, it's much easier because those guys, and so like when I worked for Bosch, and those guys, everything they're thinking is 3 and 5. Yeah, they worry about the month and the year, of course, but all they're thinking is a 3 and 5 year horizon, right? This is how they think, and so when you when you're putting plans together, everything is on this perpetual calendar that way, but their systems are set up that way too. And so when you're planning and you're looking, you look very holistically, and this is how and that's how they're built, and you get, for lack of a better word, almost brainwashed into this mentality, which is great
Yeah,
because
it is great.
it's you're not doing knee jerk, we've got to make the quarter type mentality.
Yes.
Then you get into the, obviously, the publicly traded sector. It gets much more difficult, right? And rightfully so, because you've got quarterly reports, and you've got shareholders to worry about, and you've got stock prices to worry about, and everything else. And so that becomes a bigger challenge, but you always have to do that because, when you're looking at this, is where you kind of have to come up with these master plans, and you really have to have a good line of sight, this kind of what I want to call this red line through what you're trying to do. Or you build this 3-year strategy that you reassess every year to how you're doing. We know there's all kinds of, whether you're using an X matrix or whatever you want to do to
Sure.
track everything and put, strategy and make strategy into reality, and all these other things. And so that you can make sure that you're getting action out of your strategy, because your strategy at the end of the day is just a filter for decision making. And
Right.
so it's how are you redlining this thing through that you're hitting from an operational and engineering standpoint, that everything we're doing is hitting what the top line corporate strategy is telling us to do, so that we're servicing, obviously, our shareholders and everything else. So and a lot of that, it takes a lot of communication up and down the organization, from obviously coming out of the boardroom, so to speak, and getting it all the way down the floor and back up, and to making sure that everybody stays aligned on what we're trying to do, and that as we continue to develop these plans, and depending on what you're going to do, and you've seen it like I've seen it, the companies that have bought in to a lean enterprise or lean production system, they get it and they know how to drive this stuff. And then you walk into companies that say, okay, lean is just 5S, and they halfway know how to do 5S. And well, 5S, and they think 5S is just housekeeping. And so they go and stripe some pretty lines on the floor, and they think they're done, and we've done lean and we're all good. And so, I always get a good chuckle there, and, that lasts them maybe 9 to 12 months, and the lines are never maintained, and they've never done a 5S audit before. And then, 3 years later, they've got to go do it all over again. So, it's what do you consider a red line process, and what do you consider a red line strategy, and how do you maintain it? And a lot of it just gets down to communication. What do you believe really is core at the end of the day?
I agree with everything you said there. One thing that I've seen other folks is, and you said it earlier, so I'll bring it back to this part of the conversation, is bringing those people in. Like when you can engage your people and saying, here's where the business is going, and here's your contribution to it. Do you agree with it? And have input into it. That just creates a level of ownership that
Right.
rarely anything else rivals,
Yeah, and the key is, to me, it's always, and when you're in a non-union environment, is when senior management, when you're talking plant managers and even above, but when you're talking senior management, when I was running factories, when I was physically a plant manager, and I even did this, even elevated roles, I made sure every factory I ran, or even when I was above that role, I would go in, I'd go work on an assembly line. But when I was a
That's
plant
great.
manager,
That's awesome.
when I was a plant manager, at least once a year, if not twice a year, but usually at least once a year, my staff would have a jeans day. And I'd take my whole staff and we'd all go work out in the factory, for at least half a day. Because, hey, we got, the hourly guys, we have to do double quality checks most of the time just to make sure we're making good stuff. But, just to get out there and understand what our people are going through and how they're working. And, when the biggest thing is, for nothing else, your hourly associates realize that, hey, they're willing to come out here. I know, there was times when I was a plant manager, I'd block out maybe an hour and a half on my calendar every day just to go out and work out on the plant floor.
100%.
Just to be out there, just talk to the people, go out there, knowing where we're having a problem on the line. Hey, I need to go spend an hour and a half on this line today to see how we make it better. Right. And the people appreciate that. Right. They appreciate that you're taking an interest. They're taking an interest. Hey, here's this guy that's running the factory. He's taking an interest. What else can we do? Right. Then, if he asks us to do something, and if he's willing to pick up a broom and a mop and a this and a that and that, how can we say no?
Hard to argue. Yeah. Hard to argue with that.
Yeah. So,
man, good stuff.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a few last questions before I let you go, but tell me, any principle for success that sticks with you that you learned in your career and you're always like, yeah, always subscribe to this or always keep this in mind when I'm working with these companies and people?
You're never wrong to do the right thing. Mark Twain, right? Authenticity is key, right? Communication and authenticity is key, right? And I've always told my kids the same thing. Always tell the truth. You only have to remember one story.
That's pretty good advice there. Any advice maybe that a mentor gave you that always stuck with you? Stuck with you?
I would say probably the one, and I've heard this for years and years and years. Run to me with problems, walk to me with successes.
Ah, got it. Can you say it one more time?
Run to me with problems, walk to me with successes.
Oh, okay, got it. All about support there. All right. And then any books that have really been handy, helpful for you, for leaders out there trying to create change?
Yeah, I would say there's one called Continuous Improvement Management System. It's not a very big book, but it's got a lot of from a lean principle management process. Really, really, really highly recommended. Another one is Toyota Kata is another one. It really goes through that. That's a little bit thicker. It's more like a textbook,
sure.
But it's a really good. It's a thick one. But Continuous Improvement Management System is a really great book. Highly recommend it. If you're on LinkedIn, you'll see the guy that writes it. He posts a lot of stuff on there on LinkedIn.
I gotta try it. Okay, I'll see if I can find the link to
Yeah,
the
it's
show.
good. You can buy it on Amazon. It's good. It's probably that book's maybe, I don't know, 100 and less than 200 pages. So it's easy. It's an easy read on a plane ride kind of thing.
Got it. So, man, thanks again so much for doing this. What
Anytime.
about if people want to follow up with you, connect with you? What's the best way they can get on?
You get me. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search Russell Dorsten, or my website is www.russelldorsten.com. And those are probably the best two ways. Email is russelldd53@gmail.
All right, very good.
Ways.
Good, man. I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for taking the time. And again, thanks you guys for watching. If you're a leader out there manufacturing, we typically talk to people in operations or senior leadership. If you have stories to tell or you want to share some of the nuggets of wisdom you've gained over the years, we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to be featured, we'd love to have you. All right, folks, this has been another episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next time. Thanks again, Russell.
Yep. Thanks, Dan.